guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. Please do make
What's up,
sure that you like,
guys?
share, subscribe.
So we need to empower women to be able to, this whole idea of women having to be housewives or whatnot, it's nonsense. At the core of it, it's actually nonsense because to have a woman working, that just adds income to your house.
Mm-hmm.
It's common sense. At the end of the day, we need to empower women to be able to work, at least to make something of themselves, rather than to have to depend on a man to provide for them.
Yeah.
Speaking of marriage, what do you guys think about the new law on Lobola?
Oh,
I haven't read.
I
I haven't read through it. I haven't read through it yet. I saw it. I haven't read through it yet. I haven't read through it yet.
Okay, so
I haven't read through
what
it.
I need to say.
I can't give a
Let me just give
informed
you a
opinion.
brief thing. Okay, so you know how in the Bible, right? There's a verse that says the man is the head of the house, and then right underneath that it says the woman is the neck of the house, and without the neck, the head is not stable. So, like most Christians always say, the man is the head of the house, right? And they never think about the neck. Like, if your neck is broken, guys, spinal cord is not working. Your head is not working. Like, everything is not in place. Like, the woman is the one that holds everything in place, right? So, this is the same thing as this law. What people did is that they took the first part. Lobola is abolished, right? You don't have to have Lobola to be married. But you have to, legally, you have to do Lobola later on. You don't have to have Lobola, but you can go to the court to get married, but then you have to come back to do Lobola. That's like the gist of everything. People forgot that part.
Okay.
It's not gone completely. You can go to the court and get married, but then you still have to pay Lobola, traditionally. So, like, that's what triggered me. I'm like, yo, when am I shooting back? I said, I'm not stop. Like you're forgetting, to read the whole concept. You're just taking what you want to understand, and that's just really what bothered me.
I get that. Like I said, I can't have a very informed opinion about this. I saw it, I haven't yet read it properly, but I want to tie that in with what Tony was asking. To what extent does culture then have to play in part of that? Is that I think our generations are in a place where we are able to mold and blend aspects of traditional culture and the modern way of living.
Yeah.
I know where our parents, our grandparents, and families then have the concern is of the loss of our culture.
Yeah.
The loss of our heritage, how that would then fade away. It almost seems as if a dynasty gets wiped out. When you start to stop bringing the cultural aspects, when you start to slowly wiping those things out, that's what they fear when you lose that. Interracial marriages, when you start changing the bloodline, intricate things like that. That's where culture then has a role in playing and changing perception. It's going to happen whether we like it or not.
Yeah, things change.
Yeah, things change. The reality is, it is our generation which is now forming part of that change. It is our generation which is then given the duty and the role of carrying on what traditions we can, knowing the world as much as we know it now to be. So what we can take from our culture and our tradition and our past, we can take and bring it up here. I don't think you will ever eradicate things like Lobola, never. Yeah. Not in the African culture. It's still it's a very profound part of African culture, and you can't get rid of that. It's considering how livestock is still considered as wealth. It's the same way you'll never be able to get rid of the rural areas and all of that. It's one and the same melting pot.
Because there are rural areas everywhere.
It's all in the same melting pot. But there are certain things that we will have to let go. If the world is moving forward, there are certain aspects of culture, certain aspects of tradition that have to then let go.
I think that people, right, what they miss in that discussion is that people want to hold on to a specific culture that's been there, right? But then at the end of the day, that nothing is ever perfect. The fact that there's some changes that can be made to that culture means that it's not perfect. So it doesn't make sense to hold on to the imperfect parts of that culture just for the sake of the culture itself.
Yeah.
If
it has to adapt.
It has to adapt. And when they're talking about this, we're not talking about getting rid of everything, you know.
Mhm.
The Lobola aspect doesn't have anything to do with the Kuombera Maoko or respect to elders. It's just that particular...
It's appreciation for raising your wife.
Exactly.
Basically.
It's appreciation, right? And what it's trying to do isn't necessarily Kutichi. They want to get rid of culture. It's just trying to solve a particular problem, maybe with how households were using the Lobola as a way to sell off the women.
Yes.
So it's a form of empowerment, so to speak, right?
Mhm.
So basically, we're just modifying certain aspects of the culture
Yeah.
that really they don't hold up in the modern day, and they won't hold up later on.
Yeah.
So,
But we're not getting rid of the culture itself.
Yeah.
So speaking of restructuring the way that we see Lobola in the modern day sense,
Mhm.
do you guys feel like how we view or how we've been applying the concept of Lobola in the modern sense is still a way of appreciation, or it's
It's been a way of making
financial
Absolutely
transaction?
no.
It's been a financial
Because like
transaction.
in the
It
Ndebele
absolutely
culture,
has.
in my culture, like Ndebele culture, I'm Shona and Ndebele like mixed together.
Go queen.
Yes.
You go queen.
So what we did is that, you know, the cows that you guys pay,
Yeah.
whenever they breed, whenever they have cows, they're given back to the, like me, your daughter, because back then the wife never used to work,
Yeah.
right? So then the husband would be the one to work. So they, you like basically giving me emancipation to be able to provide for my new family.
Yeah.
But then now that
By
people,
giving you the offspring of the
yeah,
cattle
offspring
paid
of the
for
cattle
you.
that were paid for me.
Mm.
But then now people have just made everything so wrong, and they're doing it for their own financial benefit, which is very bad. And that's what I think our government was trying to do by like turning it back to the cultural thing. Because I'm sure it's the same thing in Shona culture.
Yeah. But and it's only because
Yeah.
livestock started losing its value in that aspect.
Mhm.
You know, I think Zim got to a state where it was not everybody has just got 10 cows that are just
Laying
chilling,
around.
waiting
They're
to be given
expensive.
for the wife.
It was like student
It's
loans.
Yeah,
expensive,
that's student
guys.
loans.
You make a
But
loan to
also
get
keeping
those
in
cows.
mind, there was a time where in this country you could pay school fees using livestock.
Yeah.
You know, so it's so many different sides of the
Honestly,
weighing scale.
To me, it was like student debt. You make a loan, you know, just so you can sort of, just so you could, like what Tandy was saying, Kuti, the thing is still there, right? You probably have to pay it later on, but you don't need it immediately to
Yeah.
get married, right? Because when you think about it, right, the people who get married, right, maybe they're starting out with their business or they're doing what, right? They just began basically their adult life, so to speak, right? And at the onset, these people are already forced to take off a huge chunk of their income or to take out a huge loan just so they could pay Lobola. And honestly, that income could have gone to, you know, improving their businesses or
Yeah.
starting up their business. I think definitely in terms of maybe culture, we're moving a step forward to say, okay, right, you can still marry the person you love, right? But then you still have to pay the price later. But at the moment, you can focus on marrying for love, not just marrying for the sake of you're the person who has money. You know, because it also applies to the ladies over here. Because sometimes ladies end up marrying people who have money, people who can afford the bridal price.
Yeah,
Because
and not
also,
for love or companionship.
also, you actually end up getting
Yeah.
pressure from your family when you reach a certain age, and they're telling you, nah, you have to marry, you have to find some dude where you know the person that you have and the person that you love doesn't actually have money at that point, but
Yeah.
they have potential. You end up marrying someone who has money, but that person is probably yeah, you know what I mean. Exactly. So I think in some ways it's definitely a step forward as far as culture is concerned.
Yes, it's a good thing. Honestly, I'm in full support of this law. Like, it's everything. You know, you don't need to get the Lobola thing out of the way. You can go get married at the magistrate's court. But at the same time, don't rush into it. Don't let these rush into it.
Don't rush.
Don't
Live your
rush.
life.
Take
Live
your time.
best life.
Be sure that this is the person that you want to be with.
Yeah, because you know I've seen guys who pay my 5,000 bucks a Lobola to the point where they like because I paid so much money,
You
I
finished all
own
your
you.
savings, and now
Yeah.
you resent your wife.
Or it's
For
actually
what?
leading to gender-based violence.
Yeah.
Because most
Yeah.
of these husbands, they're now saying, "I paid so much money, Sagawato, I own you."
Yeah.
You know, they start feeling that entitlement.
5,000.
You can't just divorce me. I paid.
5,000 for some people, that's their year salary.
Mm.
That's their year salary. For most people, it's less than their year salary in Zim. It's more rather than their yearly salary in Zim. And you know, for you get that level of entitlement, which nah, I paid so much money. It's like you get a
I'm
car.
entitled to this.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
messed up.
scratch that.
Daniel, what do you have to say?
Again, like I said, it's just hard for me to make an informed opinion just because I still haven't read up on the bill, the passing of the bill. But the principles remain the same in that we are then responsible for bridging the gap between the traditional culture and the modern culture and the modern way of living. I think it's more than important to keep both parties protected financially. You know, Lobola has then been used as a way to empower the bridal family, the bridal party, you know. Because guess what? A lot of expense goes into then raising the daughter to become the wife to be, as you would have it. So there's so many different sides of it, and pressure that comes from it, and expectation that comes from it. But I think this is the first step into modernizing the tradition of Lobola, and having the whole dowry bride price reconsidered in African cultures. This is only being passed in Zimbabwe. I think if we're going to have this discussion next time, let's have a look at how Lobola has evolved across the African continent, specifically in East and West Africa. Because it's a whole different spectrum, and how Lobola varies across the continent I think will give us a lot more insight. So
And also, I think for our next conversation, I want to discuss how exactly we're raising our girl child to be. What are we raising her to be? A submissive wife, or what? In the modern sense, what are we as future parents supposed to raise our kids to be?
I want to take it a step further than that to say, really, are we going to raise our kids the same way we were raised, or do we raise them in a more modern framework? You know, to say that, honestly, I assume most people over here, right, we already know that, you know, in the systems that we were raised to work.
Yes.
Right? It doesn't encourage free thinking or whatnot, right? To go your own way. It's like a really low risk sort of framework. So hopefully in our next video, we'll be looking at that and how exactly do you raise your kid to be a boss and not a worker.
Woo!
Yo, and that is all for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video.
Thanks, guys.
Please make sure that you like, share, subscribe, and we outie. See you next time.
Aye.
Yeah,